One day, Jesus picks 72 of his followers, not the 12, 72 others, and sends them out in pairs ahead of him into every town he plans to enter. 72. You have probably heard this story. Have you ever asked why that number? It is not random. It is a callback to a list at the front of your Bible, a list almost nobody reads. And once you see it, the entire mission of Jesus snaps into focus as something far stranger than a preaching tour. It is a military campaign, the opening move of a reconquest of territory that was signed away at a tower called Babel. And it explains the strangest travel plan in the New Testament, why the Apostle Paul was ready to die trying to reach Spain. This is the war above. Dispatch 7. Start at the tower, because if you have watched our Babel dispatch, you know how this war got its borders. At Babel, humanity united in rebellion, and God responded with a legal act. He divided the nations, and he assigned them. When the Most High gave the nations their inheritance, he set the boundaries of the peoples according to the number of the sons of God. Genesis 10 lists those nations. Count them in the Hebrew text, 70. 70 nations, disinherited, placed under lesser members of God's own council. That is the Old Testament's map of the world, and the Lord's own portion, a nation that did not exist yet. Hold on. Didn't Jesus count 72? Keep that. It matters, because the divorce came with a promise. God immediately called one man out of those very nations and told him, "And all the families of the earth will be blessed through you." All the families, the ones he had just given away. From the beginning, the plan was to take them back. Then, for the rest of the Old Testament, the map does not move. The nations stay under their gods. Hold that thought. Now watch what Jesus does with that number. He appoints 72 and sends them ahead of him. One representative, so to speak, for every nation on the Genesis 10 map. A preview, staged at the scale of the world. Now, be honest with the text. Some ancient copies of Luke say 72, others say 70. Skeptics call that a problem. It may be the fingerprint. Count Genesis 10 in Hebrew, and you get 70 nations. Count it in the Greek Old Testament, and you get 72. Whichever copy of Luke you hold, the number is pointing at the same list. Some scholars hear a different echo here. Moses, 70 elders. That is a fair reading, and honest teaching says so. Heiser's case is the map. If he's right, this was not a staffing decision. It was a declaration of intent. The scholar who mapped this territory, Dr. Michael Heiser. His case, the mission of Jesus, is aimed at the Genesis 10 nations. The whole map, not just Israel. And listen to how they report back, and what Jesus says it meant. "Lord, even the demons submit to us in your name." And he replies, "I saw Satan fall like lightning from heaven." They preached in villages. Jesus describes a casualty in the heavens, because in this war, that is what the mission is. Which brings us to the marching orders you have heard 100 times, and maybe never heard at all. "All authority in heaven and on earth has been given to me. Therefore go and make disciples of all nations." Read it like a legal document. First, the transfer of title, all authority, in heaven, where the rebel gods rule, and on earth, where their nations sit. Then, the therefore, because the title has changed hands. Go, not to individuals scattered at random, to the nations, the same word the Greek Old Testament uses for the nations of Genesis 10. On this reading, the Great Commission is not a slogan about sharing your faith. It is a declaration of repossession addressed to every territory on the Babel map. And the campaign opens with a mirror of Babel itself. At Pentecost, the Spirit falls, and Jerusalem's crowds hear one message, each in their own tongue. Babel reversed. The languages that divided the nations become the delivery system for taking them back, which leaves one riddle. Paul. Near the end of his letter to Rome, Paul says something almost nobody preaches on. He writes that from Jerusalem he has proclaimed the gospel in a great ark, and that there is nothing left for him in those regions. Nothing left? There were millions of unbelievers behind him. What is he talking about? Then he names his destination. I hope to see you on my way to Spain. Look at the Genesis 10 map. Spain is its far western rim, in Heiser's reading, the region of Tarshish, the end of the known nations. Paul is not wandering. He's working a checklist, planting the flag of the new king region by region, racing for the last edge of the map that was signed away at Babel. Is this reading certain? No, and we will always tell you so. It is Heiser's case, one reading among several. Psalm 82, the courtroom scene of this series, ends with a prayer that has hung in the air ever since. Arise, O God, judge the earth, for all the nations are your inheritance. The Great Commission is that verse in motion. The nations were the inheritance. Babel was the divorce. The mission is the repossession. And you were not invited to watch it. You were drafted into it. The whole war is already on screen. The rebellion in Eden and Babel, where the map was drawn. Start with either. The war is older than you think, and it is not over. This is the war above.